Years after quitting smoking, a former smoker who has not craved a cigarette in months suddenly feels an intense urge at a party where others are smoking. This is spontaneous recovery, a conditioned response, thought extinguished, reappearing after time has passed. Understanding why extinguished behaviors resurface is essential for anyone designing therapy for phobias, addiction, or any learned emotional response. Extinction occurs when a conditioned stimulus is repeatedly presented without the unconditioned stimulus it was previously paired with, causing the conditioned response to gradually weaken and eventually disappear. If a dog conditioned to salivate at a bell is repeatedly exposed to the bell without ever receiving food again, salivation to the bell will gradually diminish. Crucially, extinction does not erase the original learning. It represents new, inhibitory learning that suppresses the expression of the original association rather than deleting the underlying memory trace itself. Spontaneous recovery is the reappearance of a previously extinguished conditioned response after a period of rest, even without any further pairing of the conditioned and unconditioned stimulus. This phenomenon provides strong evidence that extinction is not the erasure of the original learned association, but rather the addition of a separate, competing inhibitory memory that itself can weaken over time, allowing the original excitatory association to partially resurface. This explains clinically important phenomena including relapse in addiction and the return of phobic fear after apparently successful exposure therapy. Stimulus generalization occurs when an organism responds to stimuli similar to the original conditioned stimulus with a similar, though often weaker, conditioned response. In Little Albert, the classic and ethically troubling study, a boy conditioned to fear a white rat later showed fear responses to a rabbit, a dog, and a Santa Claus mask with white cotton ball hair, all sharing visual similarity with the original feared stimulus. Generalization gradients show that the strength of the generalized response decreases systematically as the new stimulus becomes progressively less similar to the original conditioned stimulus. Stimulus discrimination is the learned ability to distinguish between a conditioned stimulus and other similar stimuli that do not predict the unconditioned stimulus, responding only to the specific original stimulus. Discrimination training involves presenting the conditioned stimulus paired with the unconditioned stimulus while presenting similar stimuli without it, gradually narrowing the range of stimuli that elicit the conditioned response. Discrimination and generalization function as opposing forces that together determine how precisely or broadly a learned association applies to new, related situations encountered after initial learning. The renewal effect describes the return of an extinguished conditioned response when the individual is placed in a context different from the one in which extinction training occurred, even immediately after successful extinction, without any time delay. If a phobia is successfully extinguished in a therapist's office, the fear response can return when the person encounters the feared stimulus in a different context, such as their own home or workplace. This context dependence of extinction learning is why modern exposure therapy protocols increasingly emphasize practicing exposure across multiple varied contexts, rather than repeatedly in a single controlled setting. The scientific understanding that extinction represents new inhibitory learning rather than erasure, and that this inhibitory learning is fragile, context-dependent, and prone to spontaneous recovery and renewal, has directly reshaped modern clinical practice. Contemporary exposure therapy protocols for phobias and PTSD increasingly involve varying the context of exposure sessions, incorporating booster sessions after apparent treatment success, and using pharmacological aids like D-cycloserine that enhance the consolidation of extinction learning specifically. This translation from basic learning theory to clinical protocol is considered one of behavioral psychology's most successful applications. Extinction is not forgetting. It is new learning layered on top of the old, which is precisely why extinguished fears, cravings, and habits can resurface through spontaneous recovery or renewal. This insight has transformed how psychologists design lasting behavior change, from addiction treatment to phobia therapy.